koutou, nau mai, tauti mai ki te ao, taupo moana record keepers. We are the 4th of October 2022 and we're in Rotorua on the shores of Lake Rotorua. You are in the company of Jeffrey Addison, our new friend here, Lois Iron, Perry Fletcher with Whaitaima TeWhare on the camera. Kia ora koutou katoa. Oh, this is Bodine, by the way. We've just met Bodine. Beautiful, beautiful kuri. Mihi. Mihi atu.
Oh, I don't know about
Careful
that.
he doesn't shred the stem.
Oh, yes. Come on, Bodine.
Bodine. Coax them outside and throw them out.
So, I'm not sure why we're here, Lois, but we really trust Perry and
When he says we've got to go this way, it's like okay.
and he's taking us to meet a very important person.
Oh.
Yes.
You know, he's
Very important.
he's hyped you up.
Perry, you've hyped me up a bit too much. But when Perry called, he was speaking about that your mahi on oratory and recording histories, and I've always been fascinated with Whaitaima TeWhare. So he is of Ngāti Rangiwewehi, and that's where I live. And I encourage anyone to go online or go to the library and read his marvellous works. The Rotorua Library and I believe the Auckland Museum hold copies of Tarangi Kaheke or Wimaihi Tarangi Kaheke's original manuscripts. So he was writing pre-1850. I did check with a friend of mine who is a curator. I won't mention his name, but he is a prominent, well-known curator. And I asked him if Tarangi Kaheke was the first writer here. He thought that, I think he was saying, Te Motu Erawera, or have you heard of that name, Perry? It was an early writer as well from Te Arawa. This curator thought that he was a generation before Tarangi Kaheke, but on my researching, no. But Wimaihi Tarangi Kaheke is recorded as the earliest scribe writing on myths, legends, Māori history, basically Māori worldview and whakapapa of the Rotorua region at least. So he writes on the creation story, the migration of the Te Arawa Waka, stories like Hinamo and Te Tanakai, Hatupatu, etc. Jennifer Curnow wrote his bibliography, which is you can view online, as well as she did her thesis on Wimaihi Tarangi Kaheke. So that is available to view as well online, and it is in the Polynesian Society Journal. I have misplaced my copy, sorry, but I think she was writing that around about 1986. So I encourage anyone to go online and his works. I unfortunately can't quote it all, and my comprehension of Te Reo is so limited, but a lot of his works are translated. Various chiefs worked for in government circles under Sir George Grey, and wrote, George Grey was fascinated and intrigued by Māori. He found them to be very intelligent, and so various chiefs worked under and with him to teach him te reo and about Māori. So George Grey published his works Ngā Mahi Ngā Tupuna, or Polynesian mythology, and probably Dr. Bruce Briggs of Waikato University thought like 2/5 of Ngā Mahi Ngā Tupuna were written by Whaitaima TeWhare, but I have a feeling that it was significantly more, and probably that Tarangi Kahiki would have been definitely editing and overseeing a lot of that mahi. But I do encourage everyone to read that works. It's interesting. It's also interesting too, because my gripe is, and it might be controversial, but a lot of not only Māori, but probably a lot of storytellers of all cultures, I think, have accessed the original manuscripts and changed the narrative, and I'm disturbed by that. So I have come to a conclusion what I believe to be the first narrative for the Te Aroha migration, and I encourage others to read and see if they conclude what I have.
So does it deviate from what is commonly known, like is out in the diaspora, to the versions?
What they have done, I think, because my pronunciation is shocking, but I come off the Tuhourangi Ngā Tuhourangi, so I'm Ngāti Te Rāwhai, so he was the tōhanga on the Te Aroha Waka, but reading the Whaitaima TeWhare's original manuscripts, he mentions about another tōhanga that I believe is on similar lines of being the same as Ngā Tuhourangi, and he has been removed from the narrative that is spoken of today, and I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I have an absolute
I've
problem.
never heard that name mentioned till you...
That is why earlier, Jeffrey, on the phone to me, you brought about Ngā Tuhourangi and Tōhanga and Canoe. So I thought, coming here, you'll get this viewpoint that looks
at another
look
now,
more closely.
I've only concluded that because several months ago there was a High Court Tribunal hearing here in Rotorua. I won't name the iwi, but there was a tribunal hearing, and one iwi disputed the authority of Māori tupuna, but they accepted the mahi of Whaitaima TeWhare, which pleased me immensely. But by doing so, I don't think that the lawyer realised who and what Whaitaima TeWhare is all about. There is controversy about the man, but I feel I understand him. I think his mindset, his heart was all about whanaungatanga and uniting of not only iwi, but iwi engaging with European. That's what I see. Interestingly, I'm going to deviate a bit, and I hope you don't mind me saying in this kōrero, but my friend referred me to a 2017 kōrero by Judge Joe Williams, and I was fascinated and agreed with him. So he was invited, I'm not too sure which group, whether it was Te Pōna Kōkiri or was some group in Wellington, and he was meant to talk about tiriti and well-being, but he did, but he expressed his concerns about leadership, watching out that and being cautious of a corporate thinking and a dynamic, and he expressed the importance of whanaungatanga, and he went right back to kupe and how significant kupe's and his wife's discovery of Aotearoa, that they had values and everything centered about whanaungatanga, and I agree. I absolutely agree. I think that's the putia, the claims, the compensation that are going to come back to iwi are never going to be enough. I think Judge Joe Williams was saying something like 5%, if that, of the assets that were taken by the Crown at the time. Iwi probably will only get about 5%. I think it works out something like $2,000 to $3,000 per descendant. It's never going to be enough. And so I worry about some of the leadership realising this, that there's never going to be enough. It's a bit like the royal family, you know, worldwide actually it's happening, that sometimes they have to peel off some of the spares and extras. And I just sort of feel, is what's going to happen with descendants, or, you know, of various iwi. I'm disturbed by that. Okay, for me, take the whenua, whatever, but please don't deny me of my whakapapa. Even if it's a fingernail and something, I want a part of that. It's not about the whenua, it is about I connect, as Judge Joe Williams said, for Māori in the day, there was nothing, no ownership. It was, I am the maunga, I am the awa, and the awa is me. And that's how I feel. Even though I'm ignorant of te reo, that's the in-depth feeling that I have.
Can I stop?
Looking at the journey of, you were talking about the journey of Numerist, and as I say, the further you get away, new stories have been added and added and added. And by the time books like Tuhourangi came out, you've got entirely different concepts and stories connecting the Arawa and its people than was ever seen or taught in pre-land court times, and narratives were given by the old people. And so you're looking at two entirely different stories and narratives. You can pick that up on how things were taken and changed, and particularly with people which are trying to get narrative to add into the Polynesian Society journals, and you're looking at edited bias of what they'd accept and what they'd delete that wouldn't conform to their own stories and theories from John White's time. So I see a distortion come that for Maori scholars later and influenced them. That all now being questioned. Anyway, that's to one side, but we Jeffrey and Whaitaima, we were going to. They initially got hold of Gerard O'Regan, and you know, the rock art man, and since then I got hooked up on rock art, but from the rock art and the sites, I'm trying to get the perspective of the context of where it is and the people and the stories and other sites around, whether Pa or anything else. And so the record keepers are starting to address those issues and put everything in the wider context, in the wider area. So our journey today, with Jeffrey's referring to the tohunga as Numerist, and where we're going today, and we will journey back, and so we're hoping to call in the waka designs. You've seen them, haven't you, at TeWhare? Yes. And
it's quite interesting actually. If you go online, Ngāti Hinamihi or Tuhourangi have posted up stories. There's about 6 videos on, and
Concerning those.
concerning the just local stories, because you had the tourism up there. So my kuia Keitarangi Toki and Little Mass was the first Māori guide alongside. There was the first series of guides alongside Guide Sapphire that hosted the tours at the Pink and White Terraces in Tarawera. So they've got the Tuhourangi and Ngāti Hinamihi, and that's the chief Aporo, Te Whare Kanapa, and Rangi Puape, Rangi Huia, chief. There were two main chiefs and their whānau up there. And unfortunately, the Rangi Puafi line, they were nearly annihilated, or through that nearly died on the 10th of June 1886 with the eruption. Bar one of the whānau members was in the Eastern Bay of Plenty. I think he was in Te Teko. And so that whānau exists today, and they descendants talk on that video, so that's worth watching. Again, the narratives change on the aspects of the migration story, things like that, and in some ways I don't sort of mind that, because the story regenerates, especially for a new generation. All I worry about is what I like about Whaitaima TeWhare, because he wrote prolifically. You have something to gauge from and a full evidence, where when I hear speakers, a lot of speakers, they will talk and they'll go, oh, my uncle told me, or someone told me, and I'm thinking, well, okay, all good, well, that's neat, but I'd like to see the full narrative, because of course I just go back to Whaitaima TeWhare. Maybe there would be bias, because Royal, who has spoken on about on the Te Arawa migration story, is actually of Ngāti Rangiwewehi. But I just, you are here in the presence of, this is Ngāti Rangiwewehi whenua. It just has a very good feeling about this place, a peaceful feeling. If you go back to the migration story, Te Arawa migration story, you will see evidence in that kōrero of it's Ngāti Rangiwewehi saving or being responsible through karakia of the saving of the Te Arawa people and the waka, and then in 1823 with the sacking of Makoia Island, when Ngāpuhi came down to avenge the utu of what happened to some of their whanaunga, and they were going to annihilate Te Arawa, and if it wasn't for Ngāti Rangiwewehi tupuna, the ancestress Te Ao Kaparangi and her uncle Hakairo and many others of Ngāti Rangiwewehi, again Te Arawa would be annihilated, they wouldn't exist. Now, funny enough, I say this, I am not, unfortunately, I am not, or I can't whakapapa closely to Ngāti Rangiwewehi than I can to many other iwi, or hapu iwi here. I've spoken descendants of Ngāti Rangiwewehi present day. They have no issue with me, they actually back me. They're actually saying I am of Ngāti Rangiwewehi. I can't find it. I don't own whenua. I own whenua here, but as far as ancestral whenua, I have no ancestral whenua in this area. So it's sort of like that saying, the kumara never speaks of its own sweetness, and I think there's a reason why I feel this way, and I have lived here since 1997, and whenever I research about Tarangi Kaheke and anything to do with Ngāti Rangiwewehi, it is beautiful. It makes sense. Hope that's alright.
Do you
I
have
think
something to say?
it's really important question to ask yourself, what is my source of belief, or whatever it is. And I remember a time when we went on a trip to Peru, and on the way there I think it was we went to attend a WIPSI conference, and there was an academic there, Taunui Stevens I think his name was.
Oh yes, he's brilliant.
Yeah, but
Yes.
he said, and this was something that really gave me thought, he said people and storytellers like us, we're storytellers, we really need to do our research to see that what we're trying to whakanui, and hand on and transmit and weave through the tapestry of our cultural heritage, the sources of our, what we think is the right knowledge, because sometimes we're basing things on incorrect and or distorted or or not? You know, the
That is so hard, and
how do you know what your source is
yeah.
and whether your
And
source is because is it what uncle told you makes it correct, or is it what someone who was alive 100 years prior and writing about it?
To me, I think you should be open to new knowledge and new ideas. I think what you're doing is marvellous, because what you actually are doing is it's creative thinking, it's everything. I mean, when I was my upbringing, and it's so unfortunate because I'd love to have the ability that you have as storytellers and writers. I always knew I was going to work for my father, so what I did was all business numbers, which is regretful, and I'm starting to read more, but not near enough. What was I going to say? Because there is something. It's sort of hard. I get what he's saying. Is it Tainu said? I get what he's saying, but it's sort of hard because a lot of people don't want to disrespect who has taught them. But it's like anything, you know. Even we're finding more and more about what's underneath the earth. You know, as technologies progress, we're learning a lot more about our universe, and I think that same thing should pertain to our stories and legends. What I think is the most important thing, again, is whanaungatanga, is whakapapa. It is connecting. My story is a little bit really unusual because the people that have taught me significantly and made me understand about Wairua have been actually Pākehā. And I'll go to the start. This is quite personal, but when I was born, when my sister and I were born, my sister was born in 62, I was 63. When, as babies, my mother, and she's full-blooded Māori from Te Teko, she was institutionalised in Taukanui for sections of her life. And she was of that generation, like she was a native speaker, so Māori was her first language, and tikanga ways, very Māori, of course. And with colonisation, that affected her because, of course, she couldn't speak the te reo. And so when you're stripped of that identity, that has to do some damage to you. That's serious. And so she never taught us. But what intrigued me is when I pulled her records and I had this feeling, it was Māori practitioners that actually prescribed her getting electric shock treatment, and she was put on Valium. And Valium you're only meant to be on probably for a month. She was on it for years. Her liver was so damaged that they thought she was an alcoholic. I have issues with that. So, you know, there is colonisation effects, but I also Māori need to also look at what they do. And we can't just stop at colonisation. We have to go back before what Māori were doing to each other. That's who we are. We just can't start at colonisation. I know that's a big effect, but also you had iwi fighting iwi. We just need to look at the beautiful love story of Hinamau and Te Tanakai. It doesn't take much to scratch under the surface to see that there was tragedy there as well, and that has to be acknowledged. So, you know, I'm sort of open to many things, probably too many, but at the end of the day, it goes back to me is about whanaungatanga. It is about with the whakapapa. If we meet, you know, different iwi, I want to know, how do I connect to you? How are we related? And if there are other cultures, if especially with Pākehā, you know, European, Māori need to engage with them and teach them. That is the only way.
They're descendants.
Pardon?
Chances are the Europeans of today will be the descendants of Māori tomorrow.
Yes.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
And that's what we all need to remember, even if we are separated by whakapapa in this
you've
generation. our future generations. We've been weaving. I'm a result. I've got a very diverse whakapapa
And
myself.
same with me. Same
of
with me.
many of 3 different Pākehā lines: Irish, English, and Scottish, with a huge history bit of relations, and then 2 different Māori iwi thrown into the mix. And kei konei ahau, you know, we're still here. And this is what I tell people: don't you bag this iwi or this iwi Pākehā or Māori, because I said it could be you'll be bagging your own descendants, and why do that?
I mean, I just did my it was an intense DNA testing, but I was 50% Polynesian, I think 34% English, 14% Scottish, and 2% Irish or something like that. You know, those things are important, but you know, I am saddened in a way because my area is in Philately and Numismatics, which is stamps and coins, and I do help, you know, where I can with my cousins, or involved in helping kuia kaumātua where I can, but I'm in such a field so diverse and outside Māoritanga. But I think there, you know, what I've learnt is there is a place for us, and even though I am associated and work in European fields, I still can have an impact and a value for helping Māori by imparting mātauranga Māori into European fields. Like, I am on the council of the Royal Numismatic Society, which is a coin society. I have been invited to speak several times about Pukaki, eponymous Te Arawa warrior and chief of Ngāti Whakāwe. So I have spoken about the book that Hot Lakes Guides, about the Māori guides, Whakarewarewa and Tarawera. So I have spoken there. It was interesting too. I will not name the person, but he is knighted, and he spoke about Wuli Apiata and the VC. We're not meant to actually talk about this, but I will mention it. And the amount of effort that it took, because he did the criteria and he realised that Willie was deserving of that BC. It took him a few years, a small team, a few years to make that happen. And I met him at a conference, and he leaned over after he'd sat down, and he told me he was of Ngāpuhi. So, you know, when I looked at him, it was, and even in the conference, there's very few Māori there. And I may be wrong because, you know, we're quite pale, so you just never know.
It doesn't pay to presume sometimes.
Exactly.
That's what I tell people.
But it wasn't until he leant over, or when he delivered and spoke of the difficulties of getting that to happen, but he leant over and he gave his, you know, his iwi. And then I went home and I researched about, just had a quick look about, you know, the iwi that Willie came from, and he was also Ngāpuhi. And that's obligation. So even though, you know, I get what Māori and Māori speakers, fluent Māori speakers are getting at, but some of us, we're so, you know, a lot of these fluent exponents for te reo, they're employed in an area where they are also paid, and, you know, in that industry. I'm not, and a lot of Māori aren't, but that doesn't mean to say we can't contribute. And it was only until I heard this Ngāpuhi, and he is a leader, but in another field, so outside the Māori realm, it wasn't until he spoke that it resonated with me, because I used to cry and be frustrated because I went, oh gosh, what can I do? I'm a stamp and coin dealer. What can I do? But now I've clicked. I can do something, and it is about, to me, it's about engaging. We all have a role, you know, and it doesn't matter where we are. You're going to find in all sorts of fields, there's even a lot of European, like Perry, they're vessels. To me, they're vessels. It's reciprocity. Sometimes there's gaps in areas where there's no one that can retain or have that knowledge, and it will go to a Pākehā. Perry's one, John Stafford, John Creswell. I've met a few people, and if they're going to say good things and have that knowledge where it is for future generations, I can't see a problem with that.
To me, that's exactly what it is, because the knowledge doesn't belong to anybody of any race.
No.
And a vessel, we are vessels, humans,
Yes.
and part of our responsibility is to transmit our knowledge and pass on what we've learned in our lifetimes so that others may benefit, and so that things are not forgotten that possibly shouldn't be, you know, and unfortunately are, because we've had a very ad hoc, random way of recording our histories, of which, and I think history is the story of many, many people, and everyone has a different lens of perception, and you with your stamp and coin collecting background have your own beautiful lens, that just like Perry does, like I have my arts lens, Whaitaima has, we all have our own
it's a lot of
appreciations.
Yeah.
And that thing of what you said, to me, it resonates too with saying that our vessel, if we empty it each day, then there's room for more learning to take place. And if we always think, oh no, we know the definitive answer to anything, then what more learning can take place?
I actually said to someone, the more I learn, the more I realise how little I know.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, and that's quite neat in a way, because it is open for us to learn. I don't mind other, as I said, I welcome, and you don't mind a challenge as long as it's not in a negative, aggressive way, but it's good to have a cordial, and sometimes we have to agree to disagree.
Right.
I think with my aspect with my mother, because everything goes back to my mother, and I used to wonder what was wrong with her, and I went through, and it is wairua, and it knocked me, and it took, it's 25 years, I feel okay. I likened it to being able to fly a Cessna airplane and being put in a jumbo jet with no manual. And what I have worked out, because I actually had to go to Pākehā, that, you know, I went to my uncles, and a couple of my uncles, and they, you know, they were full-blooded Māori, and I sort of spoke, but I couldn't explain what was happening to me in a mātauranga Māori way that they understood. So it was rejected. And I ended up going to, I was so worried, this is very personal, it took me a few years after the significant feeling and change came over to me. A friend of mine, Pākehā, came over from Australia, and I said, I feel a mess, because I'm generally quite grounded. I said, I'm a mess, and I believe that I'm experiencing wairua, it's Māori, it's ancestors, but now I'm quite scared to see any relations because I've upset some. And she said, oh, you should see my godfather. And she said, Brian Hodgson. And I remember Brian's taught my sister in the 1970s, so I went to see him, and I started to explain the unusual things that were happening. It was sort of like lots of coincidences, but quite deep. You know, like if I wanted information, it was sort of like someone randomly would give it, but it was on like a constant daily basis. It wasn't, I didn't feel evil, but it was sort of like overwhelming. But I started to talk to Brian, and he goes, it's all right, dear, it's matakite, it's second sight. So I just cried. I went, oh my God, you know, you've given it a name, what's happening? And I said, well, why is this happening? And he said, Lois, you are from the Ngāti Te Rāwhai people. They're the most spiritual of all te aroa through the a whakapapa, a direct whakapapa to Ngā Tuhourangi. And but it's sort of like I worry because there are Māori that are, and probably others that are institutionalised, and it disturbs me that, and they're given drugs or electric shock treatment, and I think it's our tupuna coming through. I refuse to say it's evil. It's actually enlightening, and the way that they communicate to me is stunning. It's beautiful. It's gentle. The only thing that I can, like a comparison of, because Māori and a lot of indigenous cultures, we accept and are known for our belief in wairua, but for me it's sort of like I actually know who I'm working with. And it wasn't until I listened to, I don't know if you've heard of Toni Morrison, and she was she won the she was Afro-American. She wrote the book Beloved, which was made into a film. I want you to have a look at that video. Toni Morrison speaks to, it's called Mavis at 4. It was filmed, I think, in 1998. It's about 25 minutes of film. Around 16 minutes onwards gets really interesting. Now, Toni Morrison was a famed novelist. She was a humanitarian. Her kōrero is so above there. I mean, she actually lectured at university. In the kōrero though, it sort of changes, and she starts talking about wairua, about spirituality. And I really resonated with that because I was brought up, she mentions this, she said through her upbringing, her university, going through university, lecturing, etc., like the spiritual realm wasn't part of that, you know? It wasn't like a known science. She felt uncomfortable about that. This woman Mavis continually speaks to her, and then I want you guys to watch it, but yeah, please watch it and see if you get what I get, because basically it made me understand my experiences. It still now and then overwhelms me, but I mean, gosh, I've never been drunk in my life. I've never been stoned. I've never, I don't touch drugs. So maybe it would help, but
maybe it would.
But
Not drunk.
I don't need to understand what happened to me. The wairua of our ancestors, our tupuna, is stunning. I hope that sort of helps.
Perry, you often talked about you sensing things rather than knowing things, and even on our way over here you talked about how you could identify to within the metre where certain...
Or within the metre, exact.
Yeah, and that doesn't come from an intellectual knowledge. So this comes from a wairua, and whether you're Māori or Pākehā, if you're
I had that young man, Craig, before he went to Tauranga, and I said, I don't look at the land with my eyes, I sense it through my feet.
Yes.
And he got that instantly, but he has... my whole life's sort of been there. He even conscious of the ability when I was 5 years old. But the Pākehās shook their heads and just with disbelief and didn't ever follow that up. When it comes on a lighter note to our get back to our rock art and all those Tuhourangi area, the paintings at Tarawera, that. And in the 60s, 70s, that or anywhere that there was rock art or waka, they'd instantly write something, Whakatane Society reviews and that, the Great Fleet. And so Pākehā were reinterpreting everything, never involved any Māori or the context of that. And so this is one of the places, or proof of the Great Fleet. All these are the Great Fleet in Ruahuata. They said the same thing, same articles. But one time a rock art, waka, beautifully done in Oka and near Tokoroa, and I showed a photo at the sort of Rokawa, the old trust board office. An elder came in from Ngātira, a Hori Dean, and he looked over our shoulders and said, "What's that?" I said, "It's a waka." I said, "That's it, but that's exactly the same style and dimension in that to Lake Okataina." And so he said, "Odyssey," he says, "well, that means we can claim all over here." I said, "Don't get too carried away now, Hori." I said, "That means Tuhourangi can come and claim over your area." So there's just, I get a reflex, an immediate response, but most of it doesn't make sense. And most people confronted or shown something, they don't want to think. They want to come with an explanation that satisfies themselves. Yeah. And that's the same journey and the problem, particularly with this history in schools and so-called education and history retelling. But it was, so when you say about we follow the footsteps of Tuhourangi, and I said, well, we could do the same with Deffenbach, you know, his time. We could follow anyone's stories and footsteps, but where stories have been told and changed and everything else, and they do change, and the further you get away, the more exaggerated something might come.
Mm. Who knows what they'll be saying about you, Perry, in
well,
generations to come. There was this magical man.
No, it wasn't a matter of magical. The thing is, I have got a smattering according DNA, and I've got pages of it for going back to the islands and that through the DNA. But it was through the electric shocks, the institutionalisations and that. My mother, so with all her Maori decide and that was all suppressed, and suppressed from 1933. They brought in an act that tried to wipe away, because the Maori by 1900 hadn't conveniently died out, as was proposed, and setting up the land courts to transfer land as each hapu died out. But by 1930s, they then brought an act to say that if you were less than half caste, you are only European. You had no rights as Maori if you're less than half caste. And then the Act all defines it. Looking at the Act today, there wouldn't be a single person claim they're Maori if they take that literal interpretation. That's been ignored, fortunately. But it was part of the eugenics that came out. And eugenics, quantifying your and eugenics came in a very strong way. So even Maori midwives and that, where with single mothers especially, their children were taken away and put in like the stolen generation, and put into white families and everything else, and to completely cut away any connection they had with Maori. And so that was very much the practice of our government and practice of the Sir Truby Kling, with the King of Plunkett. He was a strong believer in eugenics. And missionaries tried to start that with failure back in the 1850s, when they tried to take all the half-caste children from the villages and then bring them in as future leaders into the European society, and educate them, encourage them to remarry back into the European society to bring back the whiteness in them. Wow. And so that was actually literally believed and practiced by certain missionaries.
It's only stopped very recently. In fact, it's probably still going on in some forms in Aussie now.
So the effects of not only colonialism, but the Maori themselves, particularly in the courts, and the early accounts are quite different to later accounts, even by the same people giving testimonies. So we, like Lois, have to make sense of the changes. And if Uncle says this, okay, Uncle, what is your standing among the Maori communities, and that as a historian, accurate teller, a researcher and retainer of all the whakapapa and the traditions? And often it's only uncles just come out with a statement that might be either taken out or just something taken completely out of context.
Your story of what happened to your mother set off all of these associations for me, because it happened in our whakapapa as well. The exact same thing. She had postpartum depression. One of my tupuna, Zephrina was her name, and back in that way they locked her up and gave her electric shock for postpartum depression, and she never recovered. And so she spent decades.
In the 1950s, a woman, if she so much looked at sideways or questioned authority or questioned her husband, she was instantly put in an institution. And shock treatments are part and parcel of it.
How shocking is that to us? We can hardly believe it.
That is part of our modern civilised...
It's sort of like, it's a hard one too, because there's no one fit. And I think that, you know, like Māori, sometimes they don't like that individualism or independent thinking, but I think sometimes you have to, but you still go back to the main source, your whanaungatanga. But for me, it's sort of working out what happened to my mother. What I do believe is that by talking to Brian, that I come from seers. I come from... so my DNA, or my whakapapa, they were matakiti. And so, you know, that just doesn't stop. So it sort of got me sort of understanding what I think our role was in our particular hapu, and our whānau in the deeper sense, is that we, and this is why I sort of, it's unusual what I'm going to say, I think. I believe that if there is raru within a particular hapu iwi and they don't sort it, that the wairua and angst of that goes out and it hits matakiti. It hits others that are associated to work out. It's almost like a flippin' jigsaw puzzle. In my 25 years, I have worked things out to that effect. I think of, or I feel tupuna are mentoring me to get through that. It's sort of weird because, as I said, I am not, you know, I struggle. I have learnt te reo, but unfortunately I've got no one to sort of practice with, but I have got mokos now that I'll have a lot more to do with, and I'll hopefully pick that up. But from what I wanted to work out what really happened to my mother, and that's what one of the conclusions is, that I come from a line of wahine, that mana wahine of old, that actually it's sort of like working out a problem and also solutions. I think that's the biggest thing. So to me, it's not one fit. I think everyone has a journey and a story, and it's all relevant. I think the danger is when and I do have an issue with leadership, some leadership, but I think you've got to be careful. Yes, devote to iwi hapu, but also be mindful of self-care, self-well-being. And if there are issues within oneself and your whānau, I think it's you know, and sometimes it can be a struggle, but I think you can work to finding that solution. Once you repair and know that, it's sort of like you can't help someone if you're not right. When you are, you know, you can assist others. That's sort of how I feel, if that makes sense to you.
Rangatiratanga isn't, to me, an obscure kind of aspiration that, you know, is always, oh yes, tino rangatiratanga, that's what we all want. But it actually starts with the individual. It's something that's very attainable. Like you say, it starts with yourself, and if you are sovereign in yourself, then that sovereignty can extend to your whānau, to your hapu, to your iwi,
Yeah.
wherever. But if you're enslaved in your own self because of whatever is keeping you in that state, then how can you?
Yes.
How can you be
Well,
a rangatira
exactly.
for others?
I mean, before you arrive, I'm not going to name the kuia. I don't even, my whakapapa doesn't even go there to her hapu. But the kaupapa that she's doing is for future generations. And in the days of old, we were, our hapu iwi were actually enemies. And I think how beautiful it is that we can put that aside, because the main focus is she wants to leave a legacy of, or help with a legacy of kōrero that will aid and advance and nurture future generations. I'm all for that.
And it's very inclusive, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
not an inclusive, I'm only going to help out people from my iwi or from my hapu.
Well, when we look, and it's funny too, because when you look at hapu iwi, a lot of them split away because there was an argument within, that's how a lot of that happened.
Still going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, that's what I mean. That Judge Joe Williams kōrero really resonated, because he's at that top area where he's had the helicopter view of seeing and knowing the negotiation with Crown, to iwi and the leaders, and he's concerned about the corporate thinking. I did a postgraduate diploma in business Māori development, and that was in 2006. They were teaching corporate thinking there, and it disturbed me. I did not like it, and it actually put me off doing a master's. I was fully able to do it, but it just absolutely put me off, because that's not what I want. And as I said, please watch that video of Judge Joe Williams, because he says, in the day, Māori, the ownership wasn't a thing. It was, we relate to the awa, the maunga, everything, and that's how I would like to view it. I've got a little pot of, I share with whānau, that's enough for me. But don't take away, just because as time goes by, and I feel it's a corporate thinking going in, and I just feel like, hey, you're denying me of my whakapapa into the various places, because you've chosen to just take your section of the whānau, your immediate section, or your whakapapa, and everyone that used to have lived and their mahi was in that particular area. It's sort of like they don't exist. And I'm thinking, you can't. I mean, they can, but why do that? It's not about ownership. It's like my tupuna lived there. They nurtured, and it was practice, whanaungatanga, aspects of the tikanga in that area. And I didn't mention this earlier, but my nanny, actually, I think I'm just trying to remember where I put the photo. A person came in with a photo of and it was of a Māori family. I'll see if I can find it for you, because it's quite neat. And they had bought, what had happened is that they had bought in a whole lot of war magazines, and in amongst it was postcards. And then as I was sorting, about a few months later, I came across a photo of a Māori family. I looked at it and I went, I want to return that. 3 months or so later, my cousin comes in. She's all excited. She said, have you seen this photo? And I recognised it as this particular photo in this book collection I bought, and compared it was the same. It was my great-grandmother or great-grandfather. We'd never seen a picture of him before, and all the whānau, including my grandmother. This photo was taken in 1916. My karawa died around 1918, and my nanny was whangaid out to Keita, Rangitoki in Middlemass. She was of Ngāti Hukapu. She was whakatohea. and she was born around 1825, died in 1925 in Whakatane, and no one in our whānau knew of that whakapapa, of that story, and it was actually disputed. I found 3 people that could talk to Guide Keita. Don Stafford, who had the story, so you guys are doing so amazing. So Don Stafford had information about Guide Kate in his book Founding Years of Rotorua. Tere Ray, who is Ngāti Whakawe exponent, whakapapa exponent for Ngāti Whakawe, he knew because Keita's half-brother was Machu, he was Middlemass, but whangaid by Joseph McRae. And the last one that came in was on this book, Hot Lake Guides, John Creswell Pākehā. He comes into my shop in 2003. It's not a very good picture of it. Comes into my shop in 2003. And he spends 3 hours, $13 on stamps. He's just about to walk out the door, and he picks up Don Stafford's book, Founding Years of Rotorua. So I start talking about Keita. I've got a picture of Keita in there. And he finishes my sentences. He lived in Australia then, like 15 years. So I'm talking about Keita, and he's finishing my sentences. And then he goes, oh, she was born in a poriki, so was I. So this is Keita here.
This one.
And
This
yeah,
one.
and this is her with Sophia. And and then Don Stafford, what was neat, Don Stafford gave me the guide's last will and testament of all on New Year's Eve 2000. He gave me her, he had her last will and testament. You know, that, and that's two Pākehā that knew. She had no children, she whangaid. She had no children. So, you know, in one generation, history can be lost. So, you know, what
So
you're doing
quickly.
is, yeah, that, and she was trying to get through. Basically, she did. And through my researching Whaitaima TeWhare, through the founding years of Rotorua, by me going to the back section, getting pages, everything to do with Whaitaima TeWhare, I found her. And then, of course, you know, it's a Wairua thing, but the documentation was put in front of me by Dr. Don Stafford, who wrote Te Arawa. He rings me up New Year's Eve 2000 and says he's got the last will and testament. That's Wairua. And, you know, that's what I feel, there's no one fit. Don't try fitting into someone else's kōrero and story. But, you know, what these beautiful people are doing, they are doing marvellous, because with kōrero, and when you do your own research, that's the main thing. When you do the own research about your own whānau, I encourage you to video or write, and through that, your research, you'll find your identity. You know, we need that. There's too many, it's bugging me, because there's so many young, brilliant, especially Māori, that are taking their lives. It's damn well disturbing. We don't even know, but the number is outrageous. If you look at the statistics, I think it's sort of like hundreds, if not thousands, especially of our young, you know, they should be vibrant. You know, that they're killing themselves. And to me, it's a loss of identity. And yes, it might be colonisation, but I think a few are getting rejected by their own. And there needs to be access for anyone, not just Māori, to know who they are, where they belong, have access to their whakapapa. It's meaningful, it's important.
At the same time, unfortunately, as you say, I saw someone yesterday and he asked me if I knew some young person. And I said yes. He said, oh, he killed himself 3 days ago. Yeah, I'm almost getting it on a weekly basis, you know. It's just shocking.
No, yes,
Shocking
yes.
waste of.
A lot of young people don't feel there's a future for them, that our generation has almost shut them out from being able to own a home, from being able to own their own businesses, from even being able to rent.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how badly we've stuffed things up in terms of home ownership, and we've used it as a means of commercial gain rather than just a roof over our heads.
I was always, because I was in the industry, and especially stamps, postage stamps and collectibles, I knew that with technologies that I had to absolutely, and I worked myself silly, blasted workaholic. So when I was 28, I actually, by 28, I owned my own home and was freehold. Not in the greatest area in Whaitaima. And then one day in 1997, I came out for a drive out at Tuhourangi, and I never believed that I could afford out here. And we've got 3 acres and a little cottage. It needs a lot of work. My sister loves animals, so we're sort of, I'm thinking, well, I don't really want to do up the house if you're going to have dogs living inside. It's like a big dog, But, with 3 acres, and it only cost 172,000 at that time. So I just got in. But don't give up. What the biggest problem is, I actually shouldn't have what I have. But in a lot of it's mindset. And if you believe, whatever you believe will come. So if you can turn around, it's weird. It's almost like, to me, the universe will come and meet you. And if you're going to say, I'm never going to own this, or I won't have that, the universe will meet you. And you won't. But if you somehow, I can't explain it, because you look as if you've got something to say, but I have always in my head, I went, I want, I need security. Mine was security rather than asset. And I wanted to feel secure, because I always felt vulnerable, because my mother was so ill, and she was a great mother, but I just didn't feel secure, and I wanted to feel security. And in my head was, I'm going to own a house. I will be freehold soon. With this property, it took a little while to be freehold, but we're there. And my sister, unfortunately, her relationship broke up. She had a baby. I did the whanaungatanga thing, and we worked together, and we shared the property. It's not easy, and that's what it's interesting with the claim money and everything coming in. If your hapu iwi can't do this for you, and it will be hard, because it's only going to get a small percentage of pūtea back in compensation. It's never going to be enough. Well, get your whānau together. There's a lot of whānau. Some of them own their own property. It's complex. It might take a bit to sort. That is another way. It's the same aspect of what our people did in the old days. Because it was whānau getting together. That's another option. But it is hard. You need to have some guidelines. Don't make it difficult. It doesn't have to be difficult. But unfortunately, you have the personalities and all those sorts of traits. But yeah, I just had a real deep sense of belief that I could do it. My father, I worked in a whānau business. Oh God, it was like, I remember going to the bank for a $3,000 loan. I couldn't even get that. The bank actually looked at my wage packet and said, oh my God, you're getting paid so badly. I'd go to a union I work for Dad, and so you don't need much.
How do you future-proof, when I see your 2 big loves in life, coin collecting and stamps, there's a very high probability within, say, 20 years, there'll be no hard currency anymore, and there'll be no postal anymore, virtually.
And that's fast going. So, yeah.
Well, how do you cope? Not cope, but how did...
Can I just say something here?
Yeah.
So if there's no hard currency, what I think we need to look at is trading.
Yes.
If you've got
Exactly.
things to trade, whether it's
Yes.
preserved pickles,
Yes.
Dehydrated jerky,
Yeah.
something to trade, I
Exactly.
think that's where you will have an advantage.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know about stamps. I love the hobby. It's, you know, it's a lot of people see it as being nerdy, but what you learn from it, this is the only job I've ever had. So I am nearly 60. My
I was a
father,
63 baby too. Well, that's why probably if I go, oh, I know you. Yeah, we were born in the same year. That's why.
so you know, and the youngest of the whānau. So my father was really hard taskmaster. He was Pākehā. So I was born in Kawerau, and then when I was about 7, we moved to Rotorua around 1970. Dad bought a stamp and coin shop, and we were working in the shop at 8 years of age, and every holiday, Fridays, Saturdays, we were working. So that was, you know, that work ethic, etc., was brought in. But Dad was quite hard, because that expectation, like we had to sacrifice. I was not that great at sport. One of my brothers was brilliant, and he managed to do the whole balance, but I ended up being quite a workaholic. Where were we going?
Positive. If we could have something positive like that from each of us, that would be a really nice addition, maybe put at the end.
So I talked to...
I was talking to a college teacher the other day, and I said, how is the school? She said, with COVID, the young people now, they're entirely different than pre-COVID. What's the use of this? Why should we bother with that? And only if they turn up at school, it's only a tokenism to last a day. And that's been a change in the last couple of years of COVID. That's talking to educators, school teachers of that group. But there's certain individuals, you take a group of young people out and give them an equal playing field, there'll be always a balance. We'll have that negative activity, what's the use, and have their hand out and be moaning a lot. But you have an individual, regardless of their home life, their social circumstances, or anything else, that will, if they set a goal, I'm interested in this, I'll achieve it, whether it's in New Zealand or overseas, and the opportunities are there for the people that are determined as individuals to reach and achieve the goal. And there's many young people that are doing amazing things with that. Some happily might have a family or a hand up, and others without it may not are able to ever achieve what they want. So it has to be a complete restructuring for the young people, that there is hope for the instead of a rental for life and out of school, a permanent debt and credit card, of which are only as good as their credit in the eyes of the banks and that. And our society here has had all the material benefits available, things we didn't imagine that have been here, but it's the security that they're lacking, the security of the families, the old family ties, the bonds, and the old people and everything else. So they're in a hard choice society and environment now, especially when most of their thinking is done by what people are telling them and the influence through the web. So that's had a generational disconnect, much with reality too. That could be part of the suicides, the depressions and everything else that just escalate among the young that one time just wasn't there.
This last little session we're having is about not giving up. Just don't give up, or set it in your mind what you would like to happen for yourself, as Louise said, and as Perry says. It's a mindset. Just don't give up.
I would like to encourage people to keep questioning, and if things aren't the way they should be, don't accept them. and advocate for change, because we may have had good intentions, our generation, but our outcomes are appalling environmentally. In some ways, the job market, the housing market, we cannot, with any true kind of, and all I would say is grow your garden,
Yes.
and become more self-sufficient, resilient, look for ways where you can live within whatever means you have, rather than forever seeking some kind of reward through a new this or a new that,
Yes.
that you'll actually never be able to keep up with. And this is our consumeristic kind of society that encourages us to spend rather than save. All of these things. We never got taught financial education. I never had a minute of it in my university or in my schooling days.
They need to bring it into schools, but then I think a lot of teachers probably never had that teaching as well. And also, there was just aspects as you were talking. The first thing is that this is generational, so the major impact is that the government have quietly allowed thousands, tens of thousands of foreigners to come here.
Yes.
They bring in their whānau, and that's the reason why we've got this homeless issue. You know, we have paid government. You know, they get highly paid. They pay consultants, and to me, when COVID hit, it resonated with me, because I was doing, I was working 70 to 90 hour weeks, working hard, and poorly. Being self-employed is very hard.
Tell us about it.
But when COVID hit and we had all the problems, I realised, I went, oh my gosh, this is governments over generations, like many decades, that have caused this issue. We haven't got the infrastructure, and like the road and everything, utilities, we haven't got that. It's not sustainable in what the government have done, allowing so many people to come in. I mean, yes, a lot are hard workers, but a lot are doing menial jobs. You go into the town and there are probably 20 beautician shops, generally all foreign owned. How many do we need in the country? This is the thing. We can't go to some of these countries. We can't go in the population basis and into their countries and do what has happened to here. And this is why prices have increased, etc., and there's hardships, because now we're battling against foreigners, and some of them are coming in with huge money. Asian countries, they're loaning, where it's basically zero interest they have to pay.
From the Chinese government.
This is what we're comparing against. But we have to find solutions. I think if I was starting over again, for the youngsters, I would probably be thinking more of, again, whānau, maybe a communal living, tiny homes. There's some wonderful homes like in Huntly. I saw compact homes, beautiful little whatis. You don't actually need much. You actually don't need much, but you have to come together. If it's impossible for single, or small families, try and get together with like-minded people to see if you can purchase or, whenua, or come to some sort of strategic thinking idea to get ahead. But as I said before, don't give up.
Be entrepreneurial.
Yeah, that's a word.
Tēnā koutou katoa. That wraps up a little talk that we've just had from Lois Iron here with Perry and Whaitaima, and myself chipping in things from time to time. Thank you for allowing us to come and just invade your life in this way, and for you to share your stories with us. So we always appreciate your frankness and your candour, anyone's, yours in particular. So kia ora e mihi nui ki a koe whaia, and mā te wā ka tūtaki mā no tātou. Kia ora rā.
Okay, so can you, yes?
So this photo here, in 2005, a woman came in from, I think, Tuhourangi, and she had some war books for sale, and they were magazines and some postcards, and I said, look, I don't really buy, books, and she burst into tears. She was Māori, but she was clearly in a state of a Pākehā. So I felt sorry for her, so it wasn't very much, but I paid out on them. And as I was sorting a few months later, I came across this photograph, and it was of a Māori whānau, and I just looked at it and went, I want to find that whānau to return it. This was in 2005, early 2005. And then my cousin comes in, and she comes in with this photo, and she goes, have you seen this? And I said, and it reminded me of the photo that had come in. Took me 10 minutes to find, and we match it, and it's the same. So this is my great-grandparents. It's Haraina and Mutu Kāwhena and all the children, and we can name them all. So on the left was Kāwhena Mutu. Unfortunately, he passed away tragically. He was electrocuted around in the 1920s, early 1920s. And then we have, we have the baby is Auntie Anna or Titi Huia. On the ground there is Erewera or Joseph Mutu. The baby is Paurini Mutu. This is my kuia here is Haraina Herawini. This is Mutu Kāwhena. This is my nanny, Kei Te Rangi Tokia Mutu. And this one here is Maria, and here is Tata. So this is my whānau. And then my cousin wanted to, because we'd never seen a photo of our koro Mutu Kāwhena, and my cousin wanted to, because we hadn't had this any pictures at the marae, my cousin came up to see me, and in the building was a digital printer, and he said from the copy photograph that she'd taken up that it wasn't clear enough, and even though this is damaged, as you can see, luckily you can still see the faces and everything like that. So this was an original, and from that original they were able to have this copy. And what we couldn't get over is that my kuia, you can see her moko kauai. So just so stunned about that. It was so nice, so special. So yeah, when you research, that's what I believe, if you research your whānau, things will come to you. This is proof of it. This is a picture of, this one here is a picture of Mum and I would have probably been about 10 or 11, so this would be around 1974 or so. We are at a marae, in Te Teko I think, but I just can't remember what event. So this is Mum and I, Tangi Meriana. She was Tangi Meriana Tautaku, born in Te Teko, and spent a lot of her life there. And this is my father, who she married, Donald Iron. And that's a photo of him. He was the longest running stamp dealer in New Zealand at the time of his death, when he died in 2015. My mother unfortunately died quite young in 1985. Is that alright?
Thank you.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Nau mai ki Taupo Moana Record Keepers. It's the 4th of October 2022. Behind me is Lake Tarawera and Te Maunga Tarawera in the clouds. We're just about to take a little walk along a track here to have a look at the Tarawera rock shelter carvings. Well, it's not carvings, are they?
It's paintings.
They're paintings. You're with Jeffrey Addison talking to you right now in the company of Whaitaima TeWhare and Perry Fletcher. once more unto the beach.
They had a gate, great fenced gate here, but that's taken away since my last trip, so we don't have to squeeze through that.
There's lots of signs here, but no signs that actually give you any idea of something.
Yes, well, isn't that complimentary, them petty signs, like any other signs in there? But the only thing being information, I went to the river and met at the Rainbow Mountain. It's given informative signs, pictures and everything else. But, right. It's like the wow factor these days, it's an factor.
It's such a weird sign.
Remember I said in Murray activity they used to, with all the water in the world, but they used to favour being around small creeks and outlets there. To look how quickly we get them up there, rise without noticing it. I took a photo, I said, you looked at me 200 years ago, all the what paintings we see in Waka, yes. And it was just like that. I took a marvellous photo.
What were the carved
one of the modern Wakas between the rollers and that. We came down here and through and took a photo of them. They were coming in just like the boats. They coming in.
They didn't have wheels on them like that boat.
I know I should have bought my hat with the beak because we just stopped the water droplets on the camera.
No, you blink, you miss that turn. And you strain and you look for signs of historic things and nothing for the average. So you let anyone know now. Quiet, isn't it? There's something the other cars that's coming around. Oh, yes, come around the corner to make sure.
Your spidey senses. Or Jeffrey's spidey senses.
We'd be saying it was 200 metres from the house.
Now, like all difficult signs, it's not best trust and barely read it.
Yes.
See?
Needs to be done.
Yes, but not quite as bad as the other bit at the other shoulder.
Oh, Pepe.
No, that was at the Maru's Cave.
Yeah, no, Maru.
But this is another one. Look, it's faded to nothing pretty well. So it's apples for apples without informative visits.
Free, would you like to swap hats for a sec? I want to try and keep this. Thanks. Thanks.
And funny, eh?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like,
I'm giving up removing tags. Well, I'm not carrying my bottle of tag remover with me.
Really?
But, you see that? Now, who's going to even give it a glance now that you can't read it? This acknowledges Tuhourangi and
Oh!
Yeah.
it's interesting that the historic places for
Now,
us to recognise some places and not others.
So,
yes, but now there's not even a sign anywhere, even on the maps, to say this is a historic place.
Yeah.
And it's
It's a
happening
treasured-
all around the country.
Tuhourangi TeWhare of Lake Tarawera presents their treasured Māori rock art. So those Māori something,
Those Māori rock paintings were submerged by Lake Tarawera as a result of the eruption of the mountain in 1886.
Yep.
When the lake receded in 1904, the paintings were partially uncovered. Of unknown age, they were executed in Kokowai on the glassy rhyolite face, and in common with rock carvings in this area, the canoe motif predominates. They were excavated in 1962 by the then National Historic Places Trust.
No, wipe that out, because you said in that book it was Trevor Hosking. Trevor Hosking uncovered, did all the work. He was one of 20 people and he just was a tag along. And this is the misleading information you're getting.
Okay.
This site is protected under the Historic Places Act and is recognised as being under the guardianship of the local Māori tribe Tuhourangi. To ensure the continued preservation of the site of great cultural significance, please do not disturb the rock or the barriers. That's fair enough.
Now with this, I could take a photo, but you can't see.
That's why I needed him to read it.
Mm.
Wow.
You see how the colour's filled right up?
Yes.
It's how we're up to.
Amazing, eh? I mean, how high it goes. Look, and some more are up there. There's steps to put in.
Well, what's happened under the protection of Tuhourangi, this is since flooded and it's smeared and it's altered and it's compacted. Don't tell me they're guardians.
You're
Why aren't
right,
they
look,
keeping
it
us
is all
protected?
smeared.
Oh, look, this mess since I was here last. It's just floods, erosion, and
The flooding would have caused that would.
but that, look at all the mess that's now on those rocks. Trouble, Jeffrey, coming back here. Look at it all washed in down here and in here where you are. And
Trevor would be turning in his grave.
historic places are just as an obscenity, into their claims.
Yeah, it's all very well digging down, but if you don't have an escape for the water, well, of course it's going to pull and flood in here. You can see where it has.
And splashed on, picnic carvings. They're no more protected than.
Look, it's even got a gutter. But when the roof's like that, it doesn't.
Oh yes, look at the protection of the roof.
Oh dear. Oh.
Why, we're going to these great protected places and I end up doing a bit of a jump up and down. But contradict me, why shouldn't I be doing it? Look at the mess.
Yes.
Protected by historic places, guardianship of Tuhourangi.
Yes. There's a bit of a disconnect, isn't there?
Oh.
It's pretty hard to get good photos.
Look, I've got the first class ones that I'll send to you.
Please do.
This seems to be.
This, look, you got me jumping up and down at Maru's cave with their signage,
This is almost as bad.
and this is almost as bad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fortunately, I've got a good series of photos of this.
Is it different in the light? You know, a different light?
No, it's this is damp, but when it's dry, they show up far better.
Yeah, that's
Oh.
what I thought.
Oh good.
But it shouldn't be damp.
No. I mean, look,
If
it's
they had
got
protection.
water leaks coming down at the face of it.
Oh.
I didn't bring my boots because I thought
I've got my boots, but now I'm going to get mud in your car unless I can get.
You can wash them in the
no,
stream.
we clean them outside.
Yeah, clean them in the stream.
This camera's bringing them up in a better light.
You've got some pictures, eh, Jeffrey?
Yeah.
Good. Oh.
Sad, isn't
Oh, this makes me very sad.
When I've seen them,
it?
Oh.
Look, they're all the clear ones right to the bottom. They're pretty well just washed away now.
Yeah.
and those used to be cared.
When they make a mess, they take away the sign, they keep the public access ignorant, and it's part of the cover-up. Don't do anything practical, Jeffrey.
Yeah. Don't do anything to actually solve the
just
problem.
remove the signs and walk away from it.
What is that? I don't know what you could do for a site like this if you're in terms of it.
Well, if I'd been involved in the first place, none of this would have happened. They did everything wrong.
How could you have changed this outcome? What would you have done?
Quite easily.
What would you have done to? Because first of all, it's being excavated down, down to head height.
Well, if Trevor Hosking was there, he'd only be digging for artefacts or anything. I mean, where is the reports and careful excavation and results of what was on the ground and that? There's nothing. It was just to, it was like getting Peter Buck in that time, And then this has been featured as one of the examples, like Ruahuata, as proof of the Great Fleet. And this represents a Great Fleet. I must send you a copy of that article, the Great Fleet.
Yeah.
They use this and they use Ruahuata as being multiple canoe designs, therefore the only thing they know is the Great Fleet. So this is the colonial influence of rewriters and speculators. See, that had quite a few nice little designs in that. They're all covered and splashed over.
Really?
The rock on top. Well, you can see some of that on the corner.
Oh, yes.
Just
Yes.
visible.
So do you think it could be cleaned away and restored?
Wow.
Is it worth it? Or
Are we
worth
going
it?
to do that with Maru's Cave?
Yes.
And are we going to do that
Yes.
with this? No, it's historic places trust in Tuhourangi. They are the guardians, they are the authorities. I mean, at the moment, Jeffrey, I think what you want, put in a practical way, is just to get that growth and that cleared, that's growing every day at the cave, at Kaiwha.
Yes.
Let's
It's a practical.
do what we can do practically
Yes.
without overstepping and challenging everyone's responsibility and authority.
Mm.
Just accept what they are, just a lot of smoke and mirrors, and just a lot of bluster. I'm more interested in taking the mess here that
Yeah, well, it doesn't. You show you love a taonga, you respect the taonga by how you take care of it, and if you're not taking care of it, well then it doesn't. Having signs saying this is of great cultural significance, well really?
So are the ones at the top the best preserved to the left there? Just to the left there?
These ones, yeah.
Yes. Are they the
where
best?
it's a bit drier,
Yes.
you can see better. But
Yes.
here again, you've got the very big long one, and little figures representing
yes.
warriors or people
Yes.
in the canoes, and the little ones,
Yes.
small ones, but they've all got their little, in proportionately little, just a stroke represents a person.
Yes.
And that's why I say to people, the dot and dashes might represent people. You could even say male, female figures or counts and that.
It also looks like you can see the ihu of the waka, and at the back I can see a paddle going down into the water, the steering paddle, and then in the middle you've got you have the kaihotu, the captain giving commands.
That's right,
That's what it
Jeffrey.
looks like to me.
And that's how I interpreted the one at Tokoroa, the Oka one, and it had similar things. Actually, more accurately done, I'd say. But this is we're not looking for accuracy. We're not looking at measuring it to within the millimetre. Like I just like to see that we haven't got spirals. We haven't got any other patterns or anything else here, unlike the Tokoroa one. that had symbols and all sorts of things, and about 60 kukawai dots. But what we've got is just a recurring theme on different sizes of the one thing, just waka and only waka. You might find you get some still good photos of some of this. What a mess. What a disgrace. And even up here with the gutter all rotting and falling in. I'm just saying short of what I said at our Maru's Cave, that the only good thing that's left is the grating.
Yes, you just...
Anything not in need of cleaning up. Yeah, it has a...
But then the mighty numbers of Tuhourangi and historic pieces and that, they say they're the Guardians Restorer, and they can't even bother updating or replacing that sign that we can hardly read now, any more than the other place.
Well, I think our recommendation should be that they should do some restorative work and...
Well, don't think they may not be approached by everyone that comes here, and it's just been ignored. And the occasional check, even once a year, that they'd say, oh, this needs some restorative work.
It wouldn't take much, that's the thing. You know, it's not many hours of work to get this sorted. It's not, just needs to be done. Yeah, I'm surprised, you know, they went to all the job of concreting this, that they didn't concrete the floor and then put in some drainage holes.
Well, they wouldn't have, as to say, they wouldn't have even had this like this.
Yeah, it's just become like a swimming pool, doesn't it, when it floods? There's a stone block carving over here. They use. Yes. So whatever Hut's house is sort of going on down here, this week as well. But as I say, the official writers have got that was one of the person who had another great, the kind of this and that. The full-time story is a great. And so let's all keep one to think out. Yes, very good. But even when they get cards, I say sheets of a marine pie and that too, just because the Trevor Hoskins as well, I'm only interested in thinking that. Or maybe the drainage has got blocked. I don't think there was any drainage. Oh, good. I think it's going to be like another 3 years' time. Let's all be necklace. Unless we don't see how soon. Oh, wait, I think it was a good day we called in and saw Lois when we did, before we just came straight here, shock horror. No, I didn't really have any preconceptions, and because of the previous trip to Ngongotaha, and the kind of, that was a shock to me, seeing how, from the photos that I'd seen of it to how it was today. That was it.
Down Amaru.
Yes. Well, just
Doesn't that take a myth of a lie? I should have hosted. I did this on the marvellous things. Should have hosted. It was probably invited as a working party at the time. Because he had interest in digging. That was all it was.
we wouldn't have found bottles there.
No, he took part of that.
He'd been going around the old redoubts and those places all picking. Well,
He was there, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Around by the well.
The waterfall. Yeah.
You know, you did restorations, but half of it was on his head.
Well, the restoration of those waterfalls, are they still there?
You know, that was about 35, 40 years ago.
But it's still there.
So it should still be there. But then under the conservation, it might well fall in pieces.
Can you find the middle?
Yeah, well, it wasn't, the watercroft didn't have a roof over it, so he just stuck more boards and had people to hang together. Yeah, so this had a little sort of fence, you sort of pushed open the gate, take all that away. Right, it's not hard. And the boss says to you, during the mate's washout, if you see some damage, request all retain commence in this area until a plan can be developed to implement and remedy the situation. So there you are.
Yes. How many years ago?
For quite a while, doesn't it?
Yes.
Until a plan can be developed and implemented to remedy. Why don't they just start tidying up while someone spends months coming up with a plan?
Yeah, exactly. Here's the plan. We tidy up the mess.
So there you go, Jeffrey. They've got a little sign there. All that's going to be sold, they're coming up with a plan.
Yes.
Why haven't they had years to come up with a plan for the sign?
They're still developing it.
Yeah.
Maybe in a decade or so they'll come up with the plan, and then another decade later they'll implement it. Oh, but then it might be too late.
So you can rest the sleep of the innocent tonight, knowing that there's going to be a plan.
Only got a
So that's our little trip to the Tuhourangi rock art shelters. You can see for yourself the state of things there. I'm just hopeful that the kaitiaki put some energy and effort into being kaitiaki for it. So that's all I have to say. Perry, what were your takeaways from this little walk?
We'll revisit it. I don't know whether it should be days, weeks, months or years to see with bated breath the plan has been formulated. When you've got a swimming pool container without proper drainage or anything, without even anything done for years about the sign, it's we just live with our journeys, but we're seeing so much unnecessary repetition of sites being affected and damaged. The unnecessarily destroyed Ruahuata, the modified ones at Murray's Cave, at Murupara there, and this one that's now been badly affected and washed and covered over with the effects of neglect, or any other word.
That's pretty much the theme that we're kind of seeing. There is a lot of neglect of the tongas.
And a lot of this with proper working bees, but it just seems that everything today won't be thought about unless people are well paid to come up with plans and architectural concepts.
And to implement them. Yes.
Oh yes, Whaitaima.
So do you have any takeaways, Whaitaima? Do you have any things that what are your takeaways from this trip?
Well, I'm really glad to have actually seen it, because all I've seen up to this moment is drawings and very, very old photographs, so it was great to be able to come here. Yeah, unfortunately the Historic Places Reserve sign has completely faded, and the cave itself, or the shelter itself, has probably 2 or 3 feet of ash and pumice and rubbish in there, so a lot of the actual paintings have smeared, and the ones at the top were quite clear. But fortunately also Perry has very clear photos of the paintings that we've just seen.
Right, so there's a silver lining. We can still see them as they were. So my friends, until the next time, mā te wā.
rewa. Cold.
Yeah, that southerly's definitely kicked in. Does not feel like a spring day.